Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Simply Thinking Podcast. This podcast is brought to you in part by Enoch's Heating and Air and Confidence Barbershop. And we have a new addition to the podcast. If we look at this beautiful little piece back here, salute, 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 the American flag. The American flag. This wonderful piece was brought to you by my friends over at 24 and More. They're a great company out of Sanger, California. I got introduced to them by my friend Juan, who had a Punisher skull he made for his shop that he has in Sanger. I saw it. I was like, man, who made that? He's like, oh, he tagged me. He showed me who they were, and I was like, oh, amazing. I hit him up and got this wonderful piece. And actually, I'm working on getting a similar piece for my living room. And guys, they do phenomenal work. So please go and check them out at 24 and More. I will be tagging them on my Instagram. Go check them out. Get yourself a piece for your studio, for your shop, for your house, for your room, whatever. Go hit them up. Trust me, you will not regret it. Okay, guys. So, and once more, guys, thank you. 24 and More. I appreciate you guys. Trust me. Oh, and go and tell them that Heido from Simply Thinking Podcast sent you. In the words of Creed Bratton, they'll know what that means. Okay, guys. So, I'm really excited to talk about today's episode and the following episodes that are to come. This is something that's actually been brewing in my heart for quite a while already. And I really wasn't compelled to share it at first because this was actually something that I was being instructed on first by, I could say definitely by God, and, just felt compelled and just felt to change on some things, to look at things a little bit different. In other words, I was being blinded by some things, and God brought me back to reality. And so I took a step back, and I was just looking at our climate and everything that's happening, not just in culture, but in the church. And so I felt God speak to me, and I said, okay, man, this is happening. I have to talk about it. So how many of you ever heard of that song by Kanye, All of the Lights? It's all of the lights, come lights, flash, lights, right? Phenomenal song. That song is actually amazing. One of my favorites by Kanye. Kanye is a phenomenal artist, and on that, it's crazy that he was actually running for president. That was very interesting. I mean, I personally, I wasn't gonna vote for him. I was just like, this is crazy. He's actually doing it. I know there were those talks about it before, but I was like, man, this guy is actually really doing it. He's a very controversial person, and yeah, so I read yesterday that he actually canceled his presidential run, but I kind of wanted him to do it just because I wanted to see his policies. I wanted to see what he was going to bring to the table. I really wanted to see that. And also, man, if he would have ended up being president, a part of me was kind of like, man, the White House is going to be Yeezy'd out, Secret Service, everybody's going to be wearing Yeezys. I was like, that's crazy, Again, I wasn't going to vote for him, but it was still very, very, very interesting. It gave me a good chuckle, but, he no longer is running, but back to the song. So this song is, again, one of my favorites, and it talks about seeing all of the lights, and he paints, this beautiful story and what it talks about. Great song. Again, the beat, super crazy. But it gives us this concept of the lights, seeing the lights, all of the lights. And so what God was instructing me, and I went back to this passage here in 1 John 1:5-7. It gives us this concept of walking in the light. And it begins with, this is the message that we have heard from him, that God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. Then it goes on to say that, we have fellowship with him, we have fellowship with one another, and, our sins are forgiven. And it all starts with the message that we have heard, with the light that we have seen, that now we are enlightened by this message. The Greek philosophers talked about it. Plato did. I know I've talked about it in the previous episodes about the allegory of the cave. The story where there's these prisoners who are in a cave, and they've been shown this subjective truth, this subjective reality. And one day one of the prisoners escapes. He goes out and he sees the sun, and he realizes that is truth, that what they had seen in there for so long, him and his fellow prisoners, it wasn't true. They were deceived into believing that to be true. But he goes out and he sees, like, man, this is truth here. So And also one of my favorite quotes by Plato, I've shared it before, I believe, where goes the following way: how easily we can forgive a child who's afraid of the dark. But life's greatest tragedy is when grown men are afraid of the light. They're afraid of truth. And I believe we're seeing that a lot now. We've been seeing it throughout history. No one likes to hear the truth. The truth offends. The truth makes you uncomfortable. It forces you to grow. It forces you to change. So not a lot of people really like to be told the truth. I think we all could raise our hands and say, yeah, sometimes we don't want to hear it, but we need the truth. We need to be told the truth. We can't grow. We can't change. We can't see things clearly if we are not enlightened by the truth. There's this quote by Plato that I really want to share really quick with you guys. And when I was preparing, this came in and I thought it was pretty fitting. So here it goes. And Plato says, "And isn't it a bad thing to be deceived about the truth? And a good thing to know what truth is? For I assume that by knowing the truth, you mean knowing things as they really are." There are a lot of people, a lot of us, who have fallen into a trap of being deceived, not with the truth, but about the truth. We are being shown a light that it isn't meant to clarify things for us. It is meant to confuse us. It is meant to trap us, to rally behind an idea that doesn't lead to objective truth. It leads to division. It leads to confusion. And ultimately, it leads to death. Not a physical one, perhaps, but it does lead to death. It doesn't lead to life. So let me tell you guys a story. A couple of years ago, a couple of friends of ours and some of the church members, we decided to go camping at a spot here in Fresno. So that night, we all took our guns, and we heard those rabbits. We wanted to go rabbit hunting. So we get into the car. It was my car. It was a big car. We all get in there, and as we're driving, we spot a rabbit. And the first thing we said wasn't shoot. We turn on, the high beams, and we blinded the rabbit. We blinded him. And then, of course, one of our friends got out, and we got ourselves a prize. But it wasn't the gun that took out the rabbit. It was the lights. We wouldn't have been able to get the rabbit if we didn't turn on the lights. We could have shot at it, but he probably would have ran away. But we had to blind him to be able to go and trap him. And I believe that right now in our culture, we have so many lights that are being flashed at us, and we're being blinded. And it gives the perfect opportunity for the enemy to come and take us out, because we're being blinded by the truth. The truth doesn't blind you. The truth clarifies things for you. That's one thing that truth does. Truth awakens you to this new idea, to this new concept. So if the truth that we are rallying behind, if it doesn't clarify things for us, if it doesn't lead us to a path of life, but all it does is blind us, once more, that gives the perfect opportunity for the enemy to come in and just take us all out in a heartbeat. And that is happening a lot nowadays in our time. Now, what I'm going to say, it perhaps is like a no duh. We know that. We see it. We hear it on the news. We see it happening every single day on social media. But our country, here in America, we are divided. And what is the one thing that's dividing America right now? It's politics. Politics is so divisive. And the fact that the church has become so involved in politics, and let me say this, I'm to blame. I really am. I'm going to make some confessions. And, I am definitely to blame when it comes to this. The fact that we have become so political. Now, we have Christian Democrats and Christian Republicans and Christian Libertarians. And we have this conversation of politics. And, it's dividing culture. It's dividing the non-believer. But now it's even dividing the church. And politics is so divisive. And this is where it all began. I felt God really begin to just, rebuke me because I got so political. And there are some conversations that I ended up having with people that turned into arguments. And, well, perhaps here I sound cocky, but I'm going to be real. It was people starting, arguments with me over something I would share, and people would get upset. And I mean, I have been called racist in the past month, like crazy, for saying certain things that in reality really aren't. And perhaps maybe I'm blind to it, but I never made fun of a race, never made fun of, never made fun of someone's race or anything. But I got called racist because I didn't line up with an idea that some of these people had. And there were some arguments with me, and of course, as a man, I would get upset, and I would end up, you know, fighting back, if you will. And then one day, I felt God just say, like, you just ruined an opportunity to share the gospel. Because now they see where I align myself politically, and that ruins the purpose of the gospel. Politics ruins the purpose of the gospel. And the fact that now we have rallied behind an idea, we have rallied behind these ideologies of certain political party. And once more, it has ruined the purpose of the gospel. Because now even within the church, you have Christian Democrats who are upset at the Christian Republicans. I've seen some people flat out rebuke certain preachers, because they don't align with them politically. And I'm sure that perhaps once upon a time, people looked up to them. And now the fact that we're being divided over something as divisive as politics, it's scary. And the fact that the church is not doing what it is supposed to do really is discouraging. It really is discouraging. And I believe that we are in a time where more than ever, we see that the enemy, he has come to steal, to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And he's doing it now. And his tool right now, politics, one of them. And it's a great tool. And, once more, the fact that there is such a division within the body of Christ over that, it really is alarming. It really is, it hurts because, again, the purpose of the gospel is being destroyed. We're no longer united. The fact that, again, we've taken on these ideas. And of course, we see a lot of evil that is happening. And as Matthew 24:12 says, for many others, the overwhelming spread of evil will do them in. Nothing left of their love but a mound of ashes. We have burned down our mission. We have burned down our purpose. We no longer are a church that's filled with a mission, with a heavenly mission. We have, as a church, have been given this great commission. And a wise man once said that it no longer is the Great Commission. It has now become a great suggestion to many people. We act like as if Christ suggested that of us. That, you know what, go and spread the gospel. That's a suggestion. If you want to do it, fine. If you don't, that's fine. And here's where I'm really concerned. Seeing it a lot. I'm not going to mention names, but you have some pastors who no longer are, well, for a long time, I will say this, for a very long time, we've seen some pastors who never instruct their church on how to fulfill the Great Commission at all. You don't hear that being preached. They preach about everything except that. We're not equipped. Once upon a time, I heard a motto in a church saying that, it had three purposes: to exalt Christ, equip the church, and evangelize the world. I was like, man, that sounds cute. But that ain't true. We're not being instructed how to evangelize. I will say that. That's one of the things that I personally am upset about when it comes to the church. Like, we were never taught how to evangelize. We were never taught how to go out and start a conversation. We were taught how to do a bunch of other things, but never to fulfill the Great Commission. Never. Once more, it has become nothing but a great suggestion. And leadership is to blame for that. And now we're seeing it even more. You have pastors who are not even preaching the Great Commission, but they're preaching things that align with a political party. Let me give you guys two extremes, okay? I actually heard this, and I was so upset that probably, to be honest with you, if I would have been there, I would have gone full Jesus. I would have started flipping things. I would have caused chaos. and I'm not very a dramatic person like that, but that's just like, no, you don't. So there's this one guy, he was actually preaching. I saw this video on YouTube, and it was so ridiculous, where he was saying that, instructed by God, that you were not allowed to marry someone outside of your race, that you had to marry within your race. He said, if some of you young people want to come and bring me someone to marry you and they're not of your race, I will not do it, because you are disobeying God. You are to marry someone who's within your race. That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard in my life. That's not even biblical. Well, if you want to take it Old Testament, whatever, but I mean, now for the church, like, really? And that's I was like, come on, man. I got upset. Yeah, I mean, I was upset just hearing it. If I would have been there, I would have been like, and I started thinking, why are these people listening to this man? Yeah, why are people listening to this guy? And people were like, yeah, man. I'm like, no. No. So this man wasn't preaching the gospel. He was preaching an idea that perhaps you can say lines up with a political idea. And now you have pastors nowadays who are encouraging people to do things that line up with a political party, with a political idea. And even doing, okay, aside from politics, doing humanitarian work, which is great. I think we all could agree that we don't want to see, I'm going to talk about it. So we have, this movement of Black Lives Matter. And I mean, yeah, we all agree with that. I mean, none of us, unless there are some people really out there who really are bigots, who really want to see a group of people suffer. For the most part, none of us at all want to see none of our African American brothers and sisters suffer. None of us want to see that. And as Vadi Bachman said, Christians, we love, no, sorry, we hate injustice. We love justice. We hate injustice. We don't want to see no one suffer innocently. We try to do things right. So of course we're going to line up with something like that. We don't want to see nobody suffer at all. But the fact that you have pastors now who are preaching that, and in whom that is the main message, to line up with that idea and rally behind that idea 100%, what are we doing about the Great Commission? What are we doing about the gospel? What are we doing when it comes to that? And this is what concerned me a bit. Now, if I have to suffer for this, fine. That's okay. I have thick skin. I can definitely handle it. This is what concerned me. And by no means do I ever disagree with people going out and rallying behind his idea, right? To go out with the protests. And I was like, yeah, cool. Like, they do. Black lives do matter. I agree with that. But when was the last time that the church got fired up by the concept of the gospel, by the Great Commission, and go to the streets in the same way that a lot of Christians were out to the streets marching for this cause? When is the last time that the church went out there and did that? With that same passion, with that same desire for change, to go out there regardless of being in the middle of a pandemic. Still say, we're still going to hit the streets because this cause is worth fighting for, and even perhaps worth dying for. What happened to the Great Commission? What happened to that same passion of saying, we're going to take to the streets, even if we have to die for this cause, but we will live for this cause as well. We just don't see that. And that is disheartening. And I mean, I'm not just putting the blame out there and being a Mark Driscoll and just, yelling, I love Mark, by the way. Not an attack on him, because he's still one of my favorite preachers. But, myself, what am I doing to go out? I actually found myself in the middle of a unwanted protest here in Fresno. There's a grocery store that I shop at here nearby. I went, just to go buy myself something to eat for the week. And it was in the afternoon. I had just gotten off of work, and I came home really quick and just went to the store. And as I'm going, there's this big ruckus. There's people with flags, and people are protesting. And I'm just like, oh, okay. So I go and look, and they had broken into a city councilman's apartment complex. They went to go talk to him. There was this big fight. The councilman pushed someone down the stairs, and it was like super crazy. But I was there. And I mean, again, it was unwanted. I didn't go because of that. I went and that was happening. I was watching it unfold. I was like, this is crazy. Cops were there. The news was there. Everything. I even came out in one of the Your Boy's Popular. I even came out and I was in the background and I didn't wave. I was just sitting there just like, what the world? It's super confusing. I don't know what was happening. I had just gotten there. So I was like, what's happening? And I heard everything and I was talking to some of the people that were there. So I was preparing, I was thinking about that. I was like, man, you know what? Like, I happened to find myself in the middle of a protest. I was like, well, when's the last time that I went to the streets and spread the gospel? When is the last time that I had that same passion? So the point, we are being blinded by the light of politics. We're being blinded by it, and we're so confused. Division is happening like crazy within the church. We weren't called to lift up Democratic hands in worship. We weren't called to lift up Republican hands in worship. We weren't even called to lift up Libertarian hands in worship. We were called to lift up hands who were redeemed by the blood of Christ, who have been instructed and equipped to fulfill a purpose on this earth. So we lift up our hands in worship, united as one, with one faith, one Lord, and one baptism. One way of going to him. There is no other way but through Christ. And we are to lead people to that. And the fact that we're not is very concerning. So on this episode, I'm about to end here. I will be talking about it in other episodes about some of these lights that we are being distracted by. Some of these ideas that we have taken on that don't align with the gospel. I recently heard this term called Christian nationalism, right? Where we are Christians and we look towards a political party to align with our values and our morals. And we want to see that. To an extent, I'm a believer of separation of church and state. And I will be talking about that a little bit more on the next episode. I'm going to continue on politics. And also I'm going to be talking about cancel culture. And how that's not a concept that's away from the church. The church has been practicing cancel culture for a very long time. Your boy has been a part of it. I've been canceled by the church before. It's not the first. It happened, and I'll talk about that briefly. And some of these other lights that we are being blinded by. But it is time for us to examine ourselves and say, are we fulfilling the Great Commission? Or are we just very comfortable in lining up with ideologies that are blinding us? There's a quote by C.S. Lewis, and he said, he who surrenders himself without reservation to the temporal claims of a nation or a party or a class is rendering to Caesar that which of all things most emphatically belongs to God himself. We have lined up with an idea. We have lined up with ideas of a nation, and we've abandoned the Great Commission. So guys, I'm gonna leave you guys with this. I want you guys to examine it. I want you guys to think about it, and let's look and say, God, what are we doing? Have we lined up with, are we giving to Caesar what is to Caesar and not giving to God what belongs to him? Is our devotion to a country, to a political party? What are we doing? Maybe come back and have God change us and once more be passionate for the Great Commission, for the lost. Take to the streets. Go out and preach the gospel, especially in this time right now where we need to be united more than ever. But okay, guys, this is it for now. I hope you guys get to thinking about it. I definitely have been. There's a lot I want to say. That's why I'm going to break it down into episodes. But for now, this is it. I want to leave you guys with that. And as always, may we all stay simply thinking.